Today's video, we're talking about how to take Google and Facebook and the power of each and put them together in a synergistic way to get you even more sales than you could have got with either one of them by themselves. Realistically, if you're doing Facebook ads, I'll give you a little hint right away that you should be doing Google 100%. And I can't think of a single situation where I have never done that personally myself, because I understand something that not a lot of Facebook advertisers understand when they need to be thinking about selling in their market basically and trying to use PPC as a whole to be able to do it for themselves. That said, there are ways to make your Facebook sales better by using Google, and there's a way to make your Google sales by using Facebook. It actually goes both ways, which I'll cover in today's video. And so you could become a better marketer online with the use of PPC ads and get the best out of these two powerhouses for yourself, and specifically why you want to do that and how much more you should make on top of everything else. So with that said, I will give you my general process of how I do this for myself when I bring Google in, when I bring Facebook in, because at different times it's different. And if so to the fact that you should be doing both, there's different times you do the different platforms differently to be able to get from a small budget where you're starting out. If you're looking at your top competitors in your space and you're pissed off that they can, spend so much money, I promise you they all started out with a small budget. The difference between them and everybody else that's not doing it is they stuck with it and they actually went through the stuff that they know, assuming that there's, some customers out there that are possible to get. There's demand for your product or service or what have you, which if you have people that have been clearly spending a lot of money that you can see in SEMrush or SpyFu or whatever, or just see lots of times running ads on Facebook, we'll just say, they went through the process of figuring out what was going to work, and they treated it like it was a life or death process to them. And so they started out with a 1K, 2K, 3K budget a month. And one step at a time, they took their profit, reinvested it, and got it. Now they're at 100K a month. Now, I do this stuff all the time here at the firm. There's no reason why you have to start out with a big budget. You just have to go in with the understanding that this is a long-term process. What you stand to lose up front is part of the game to get the formula down, and then you're going to scale it. But with all that said, there's a specific way that I scale my ads here that I'll tell you about, and then I'll also, then with and through that, I'll explain why Facebook and Google really do or should be used together, and put to get both of them basically to work. If you're going to sell online, why you want to use both of them together specifically itself. So anyway, with all that said, I'll get into it here. There seems to be a lot of disagreements out there about what is actually better, Google or Facebook, to spend their PPC ad budgets on. You have that 3K a month. What should I spend it on? Should I spend it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Taboola, Reddit ads? I mean, there's so many ad networks out there today. Obviously, most people know Google and Facebook's what they heard about the most. That's like their gut feeling what to go with first. But the decision to go between Google and Facebook, now that's a tough decision for people to make. I'm here to tell you that the answer is actually you want to do them both, but at different times or stages specifically to be able to get the best of both worlds or best out of each. And given that you do want to go through that process I mentioned, or that's your goal, which is to take a tiny budget, go after the lowest hanging fruit opportunities with each of them, and then use that to recycle the profit back into a little bit more ads, and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and that, depending on where you're at there in your scaling process, we'll say where you want to go, what gets the highest return first, but it's limited, what gets the second highest return, what gets the third highest return, and more importantly, how you blend these networks together to support what you should be getting on each one that's possible, but you wouldn't get running it on its own, which is the whole point of this video here. So anyway, I'll put that in a frame of reference real well for you here in this next part of the video. So anyway, here's personally what I do 90+% of the time I'm working on an account. Sometimes Google Ads won't work for certain markets. If we're selling mattresses online, there's huge companies that sell mattresses that, frankly, they do run it basically near at a loss. They have money to spend, they blow it. A lot of even big companies don't even have their tracking set up right, and they can afford to run at a loss, and there's enough of them. Google search ads don't work. There's some different markets like that. It's rare where we're not going to use Google and Facebook, and the rest of the time, Google actually is the one that we want to start with first, because that is the one that has the highest return, the quickest, and therefore why we want to focus on it first when we're just starting out. What I'll do with Google, if it's not a local business, is we'll go after what are called long tail keywords and brand terms. We go after long tail keywords, so if somebody's looking for brand new, we'll just say a brand new high-powered hole digging piece of equipment. That's what we sell. You could go after hole digging machines, which that could be lots of different types of machines. That's a short tail keyword. And you can also say personal hole digging machine, which is not for business, which if you sell to individuals, that gets you a lot more targeted prospect. That's more so what they call long tail keyword. With that, I'm going to go and do it. People think that they could go into the Google account when they set up an account in 15 minutes by clicking on the suggested terms. Click, 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 they're done. No. You spend a few hours going through and figuring out what is the long tail keywords that not just somewhat will get you customers, but like what laser targets them with your search ads. Because some keywords might have the potential to give you a lot of sales, like the hole digging equipment, but you can't, everybody who searches for that, if you can think that they might be wanting other things, then you don't want it, at least at first. So the long tail keywords, they have less potential, but the return is higher. And when you get started, you just want a high return, so you'll live to go another day. Number one important job, if you're like most, startup entrepreneurs, is you got to not run out of money. Once it's profitable, it's all a downhill slide. You can keep taking 10% of your budget or so, having that as the new speculative thing you're doing next to learn how to do that. And then when that works, now you can take another 10% of what your overall return is and invest into another thing. But we do the brand keywords too. Why? Because, which I'll talk about when we get to the part where you're doing Facebook and why Facebook and Google go together. Long story short, if somebody is already, you've advertised to them, you have a Triton hole digging machine, that's the name of your brand, Triton. They go to Google and they can't remember your brand name and they can't remember how to spell Triton. You want to make sure that your ad shows up there because that's like the easiest possible gimme sale there is. And you want to make sure if they misspell it that they can find it. That's what brand keywords are about. A lot of people don't know that, but we'll do that first. That's the highest returning thing. And then we'll have some remarketing. I mentioned on my other videos, I always do remarketing at every single PPC client project we have. Why? Because there's a thing in marketing called frequency is more important than reach. If you're not you will make more money devoting part of your budget to some follow-up than spending all your money getting new people to come to your site only. That's the case every single time, unless you're talking about like a broken toilet repair. That's something you want now or never. Now, that is an exception, but most markets aren't like that. And so with that, we follow up with our testimonials and reviews and our third-party case studies that somebody wrote an article on us to convince the user that we're still worth, and if you're still considering going with us, you should go with us, and to remind them to buy. and to throw out periodically an ad that says we're having a sale this month, so if you're going to buy, you buy now. And that goes into getting the initial click to pay off. People think those follow-up ads called remarketing are for extra sales. It's about getting the initial click to be profitable. That's the way you're thinking about it. So the return of the remarketing won't be good, but the return of the first click will go up, given that you have the remarketing ads to go with it. And so because a lot of people are on Facebook, and because Facebook's newsfeed ads are so liberal with their size, and you can get so much done with those ads, and people focus on them a lot, well, we're going to split. I'll do a Facebook remarketing budget. I'll take 5% of my overall PPC budget that I have to spend for marketing on Facebook. We'll take the same ads we'll run on Facebook fundamentally. We'll build into some banner ads and run those on the Google display network and spend 5% of our budget there. Okay? So we have around 10% of our budget going to just remarketing, which is about the ratio I stick with all the time. If I spend $5,000 a month on PPC, 500 is going to remarketing. If I spend $50,000 a month on PPC, then 5,000 a month is going to PPC, and it goes up. The ratio stays similar as we continue to scale, because that remarketing is a key part of getting the overall package of what you're doing to work when your competitors are not following up with people and they're going around checking multiple sites to see what they want, and you're the only one following up with them and telling them great information about why your product is awesome, why it's durable, why it's more powerful, why it's cheaper. When they go to buy 2 weeks from now, they will only remember your product. Respectively, so this is starting out with no sales. This is my standard ironclad structure I'm going with. When you do, so you got to make sure to hook up your tracking for Google and Facebook before you start. And with that, you should also know what your cost per conversion needs to be profitable. And if you don't know it, figure it out before you start, so that you know when you get into it, you don't have to panic. You'll know if you're near profitability or you're not. So you can, cut the budget down until it's, it's working, whatever. Take your time, go slower with it, whatever. But you have the Facebook and the Google conversion tags on your site with the tracking. Once you get started, you're building up, as you get customers, some data that Facebook will use to be able to get you more customers once you get enough data on customers that you got, because they look at the one of tens of thousands or millions of traits that they have to classify users of their site that they use from their user, data on Facebook of what people do there. They also buy data from different companies like Microsoft and stuff, and people that have apps, they buy data from search engines, whatever, and they combine that data with Facebook's data to build up a profile on all their users, so they can predict what they're going to be buying, and you're going to be taking advantage of that yourself, even though they have that data to know who's bought. Maybe you have other hole digger equipment competitors on Facebook, and they're running ads, and that'll be data that you use to get sales. But more specifically, because each company is a little different, you get some sales. Even though your sales are coming from Google ads, Facebook will get the data about who bought, and those customers won't be that different than Facebook customers. Trust me, they won't. You're building up a profile that eventually Facebook ads, to get new people in, not just through remarketing, will become profitable. Okay, it's just not at the moment that profitable, but it is time right away to do Facebook, because that helps get the initial Google ads profitable. So you use this to get some initial sales with Google without trying to go into the red too much. So after 2 or 3 months, we're profitable already, and then we're building up a actual lookalikes audience on Facebook that we're going to use in later stages, particularly when we get to 100 sales in terms of the lifetime of what you've done already. 100 sales, now you're ready to go to the next stage typically, which is number 2 here. Once you've gotten 100 sales, and you're basically should be profitable by then at least a base level, maybe not as profitable as you want, but then you can switch over, and since Google works, those same exact keywords I'm going to use on Bing. Bing, people think it's a big joke. It's 10 to 20% of the search market, sometimes more in certain markets, and those people have more money and they can convert at a higher rate or and at a cheaper cost than Google will. So if Google works, you have a gimme to get an extra 20% worth of sales on Bing or thereof. So I'll use the same exact keywords, those same long tail keywords that you used on Google, on Bing to get some more action there. Respectively, I mentioned that if it's a local business, it's a little different. The keywords I use if I'm a local business are the long tail keywords that I told you about, but also the short tail keywords. Basically, if you're a foundation repair company, somebody typing in foundation repair company is great. I'll bid on that term, but I'll also bid on foundation repair. Why? Because in the local market, you have a lot less available, search share, or people making relevant searches each month. You're kind of stuck with that. So you're not having you usually don't have the ability to go after long tail only if you're a little local company. We'll just put it like that, or in general. You can if you can go long tail only at first and still spend your $1,000 a month, you will get a much higher return because you're now local and you're doing long tail, because anything that's local is kind of easier to get a return. And then you can go to the short tail, but respectively, if you're talking about a local business, then when we get down to stage 2, you're doing long tail, short tail, and the brand terms, like I told you before. But you're also then moving on. We're going to have our remarketing that we had before on Facebook, remarketing on Google. Both 5% of our budget's going to go to the remarketing on Facebook. 5% of our budget's going to go to the remarketing on Google. But we're also going to now add in 5% of what we're spending at, or in other words, driving new users to our site to buy what we're doing, whether it's product or service. This is all relatively the same. 5% will go to try to get the Facebook to drive new customers, not just the Google itself, and not just search engine advertising in general, Google, Bing. Okay? Why? Why now? Because we got 100 sales already from what we did up here. Now we've built a lookalikes audience, is what they call that. It's like we'll do times 1. So basically, you're going to do, you have 100 people, and you're going to say, give me the people that have the similar traits as these 100 customers. They look at, all their users on their network, and with that, your customers, all their traits, and what are the commonalities between all the traits that they fit into and the boxes they fit into, and then compare that to their entire network of users, and then they try to get you in front of the people that have the most similar traits as each other. So that will, why 5%? Because it's not going to work for a while. Google and search engine ads basically work fairly quickly. You should have, if you spend the time to do the long tail keywords right, you can be profitable in 1 to 2 months already. Okay? Particularly if you do a 1 keyword per ad model and you listen to what some of the other videos I cover that talk about how to build a campaign that's going to work every single time and be better than your competition, which it usually takes to have it guaranteed to be profitable. If you want to be guaranteed to be profitable, you just do a better job getting the user from search to what they want than them, and you win by default. Because the clicks are priced for less efficient people to afford it, and now you're going to get more from a click than everybody else, and paying the same price. By default, you're putting yourself in position to win automatically there. But the 5% that goes to getting new people on Facebook, that will take 6 months, sometimes more, 9, 12 months. Consider what you spend on Facebook to get new customers as your investment into the process to have back-end results. You might have to spend, just consider it, the money is just gone. It's like you're going to the casino, you realize you're looking for a jackpot, but you're not going to expect it. Whatever your money, you're already counting on losing anyway. It's kind of not a good analogy, but it's more so an investment. Facebook thinks they can get you the closest users to the 100 customers that you gave them to look at, but it's still a process of elimination for them. Okay, the less data you have, the more of a guessing that they have to do. So they're trying this and that and this and that and this and that. and you may have to have 10,000 clicks before they figure out and catch on. Of the possible, 500 things that they thought would work, they found the one in 500 that works, and now it just works and works and works after that. That's what you got to expect generally with Facebook. So the money that the 5% is there because it's not a big enough percentage to bring your overall PPC investment into a negative territory, but it's enough to start gathering data so that eventually it will be profitable and will be a part of the part of what you got that is bringing in profit for your company every single month. Okay, so that's a very conservative way to go about doing things when you're starting from a little money and you don't have a bunch of money to invest into it, and you want to take that money and get it to where you're doing millions a year in sales, and do so just with what you're returning from what you had initially. Once